Scott,
What?
welcome back.
Oh, God, I'm here.
It is episode 3 of Board All the Time, and I am very excited we are here again.
I enjoy it every time I'm here, so...
See, we record in my studio, office, game room, basement, dungeon thing.
Sometimes.
It's where I spend the vast majority of my life, as it turns out. But you know what? I'm glad that we are here and able to do this. It's a good time.
Oh, yeah.
Scott, what has been on your table?
This is going to shock you, but Frosthaven. I mean, I hate to say it like that. I mean, it is what gets played the most for me. I have another gaming group that I sit with weekly. We try to get through stuff. We actually finally beat one of the missions that has been kicking our keisters, and we were able to unlock a puzzle. So then we actually got to go into the side book and actually work on a puzzle.
Nice.
And before we ended our evening, we actually completed the puzzle and unlocked more stuff. After like 3 weeks of this thing kicking our took us.
Because that's one of the other major changes from Gloomhaven, right? Is it has that extra book.
Like they had some puzzles that were in Gloomhaven. Now we've got like this full book and... all of a sudden I want to say it was like the second or third puzzle. It was like, yeah, so like what colors was this thing? And we all went, we weren't paying that much attention. So like we went back into the thing and like reread everything that was going on. And we're like, oh, okay. And then like plugged and played and figured it out. But we were like, oh no, we have to pay attention. We can't just sit there and charge to the dungeon. No. So they've actually put some extra stuff in there.
Now you know better.
But other than that, I mean, we might as well just talk about it because we actually just got to play the brand new game from Roxley called Skyrise.
Yes, we did.
We both enjoyed it at different levels.
Yes.
You know, overall, positive, not super positive, but definitely positive.
On its face, it's just a game that looks like it was designed for me. It has multiple layers of set collection. It has auction. It has a great production. It is fast learn, fast teach, fast play, incredible rule book. You don't actually need a player aid. The one that's in there is for setup, which is excellent.
Yep.
But for me, something was just... it's close. It needs something else, and I don't know what it is.
You said like we were talking about ratings.
Yeah.
We're going to give it like 6.5, just in between that 6 and 7.
Yeah, for me, it's a 6. Like I said, I don't like using halves, so I try to stay on whole numbers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just something that's just inherently missing, or if it's something that an extra little deck of cards or something could spice up.
And I think that's the reason why I give it a 7, because I'm
fair.
like it's very solid bones. I don't think...
This is a game that is not for you.
Yeah, this is completely not, because
You bought it.
And I did. I actually kickstarted the puppy. I did the whole deluxe edition because the pieces that were deluxe, you know, instead of doing just base towers, they were actually carved and formulated, and each one's completely different, and they all have a theme, and metal pieces and silkscreen printed wood. And
it's Roxley, who are the king of production.
Yeah.
But everything that is in that box, everything you upgraded, is a good, solid, functional upgrade. I don't think there's a wasted cent in that box. Right?
The nice thing is with Roxley, they do a great job with the packaging. This is a solid box. They even give instructions on the back of the island pieces on what order you're supposed to pack them back into the box. And it was on the side of the box. So it's like, oh, this is what it is and this is where it goes. That's just fantastic, because you sit there and you look at Frosthaven. You don't have that. You have to go to a separate company to purchase one, and then still you're like,
and pay a good amount of money on it.
And pay a good extra amount of money on it. You don't have to do that with that. It's just really good, and it was definitely worth the $75. And I would even suggest get the base game for between $45 and $50. Get it.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
It's a lot in there.
If you can't get a hold of the collectors, I don't think you're missing out on anything.
No.
You're still going to have a good game.
And I really do hope that somehow this gets out to the people at Roxley, and I really hope that they do make an expansion, because I think a delicious expansion of like maybe bigger islands or a lot of little islands would be phenomenal. That's been what's on my table.
I got to play some of my favorites, some Q-Birds, Just One, High Society. I also got to play Space Base physically again. And Space Base at one point was in my top 10. And then I played an enormous amount on Board Game Arena. I've played an enormous amount since it existed. But I played a lot of it digitally and most of it asynchronous. And it just fell apart for me to where I realized really the strategy is you get points in the upper portion of sectors 1 through 6 and you just passively gain points and the game ends. And so I had an opportunity to table it again with a group of 5 people. And I realized why I like that game as much as I did, because the table feel is a lot of fun. It's so much fun to talk to people, to have that like, man, I need you to roll anything but a 6.
Oh, right.
Like that type of stuff.
And that's what's good about board games in general, is the fact that typically you're sitting in front of a person that you care about, and then therefore there's commiserating or, you know.
And there are certainly games like, I mean, I love Arc Nova, and admittedly, Arc Nova doesn't have the most player interaction, which is normally something I don't like. But that's a game I will play asynchronous. I will play it live. I will play it on the table. I really wish BGA had the expansion on there, because that expansion is phenomenal.
Is the water expansion?
It's so good.
I have not got a chance to play it yet.
But ironically, none of that is what I wanted to talk about for what's on my table. I've been playing a lot of Leviathan Wilds. That's a deluxe Kickstarter that I got in recently.
Okay, nice.
And it's quote-unquote deluxe. There's not a ton that's really needed to be upgraded in there. I have no idea what my rating is on it. And I think I've played it 7 or 8 times already.
Wow. 7 or 8 times and you don't have a rating on it?
Because Leviathan Wilds is essentially Shadow of the Colossus, the cooperative game. On its face, executes that very well. All the Leviathans look very different, look very interesting. Everything that's going on feels on theme. The way you build your character, you take a random class and you take a random climber and you put them together, and you have a very small deck that you have to manage continually refilling your deck. If it ever runs out at any moment, you just fall to the ground and you have to deal with that. There's some really neat choices to be made. What's hurting me on it, there's a ton of randomness, which does distinctly affect how you play. There are just simply better builds than other ones. Generally speaking, the quote-unquote more complex characters, the ones with extra tokens, are just better than the ones without them. There are 17 Leviathans in this box, and I'm 50-50. It seems like I win one and then I lose one. But when I beat a Leviathan, I'm like, cool, I'm going to move on. And when I lose against Leviathans, it's like, cool, I'm going to move on. Because I have no desire to go back to a prior Leviathan. And there's 17 in the box, only 16 of which I'm going to play because I really don't want to stare at the big spider for about an hour. I'm not like a huge arachnophobe, but I also don't like spiders, and I don't really want to play against them.
Okay, I'm an arachnophobe as well, and I just want to see it.
No! Ultimately, I think I'm going to play a few more of the Leviathans, and I'm going to enjoy it, and then it's going to be gone. I don't know. The other major problem I have with it is the Book of Leviathans itself is too small. It's a 4-player game. This would be a nightmare to play 4 players on.
Oh, yeah, because it's about the size of a notebook.
It is. And if you look at how many little icons are on there, colors look the same, like the blue and purple. They mean different things, but they're problematic for people with colorblind issues.
Yeah.
This is another one that has a lot of good ideas. Like, I've enjoyed most of the plays I've had. The first few were very, they were very whiffly, because that first Leviathan is super boring. But you need that one to learn the system. Number 4, The Watcher, was huge difficulty spike. That one sucked. There's some really neat ideas here. Ultimately, I know I'm going to play through the majority of the Leviathans, and then I'm going to send it to my buddy who absolutely loves Shadow of the Colossus. I think he'll like it more than I do.
It looks very interesting.
It's an easy teach, and if you want to try it out, I'm happy to try it out with you. But the solo mode is play two-handed. I don't think it's going to make a lot of difference between just us talking. That adds a lot to a game, certainly. Like, that's why we like playing board games.
Yeah.
But mechanically, like game experience-wise, some of the options feel very obvious and very like, well, I have to do this right now. It's very pretty. It's inexpensive. I think even the deluxe edition was $40, $50, something like that.
That's nice.
There's the mutation deck in there, which is a really neat idea where essentially you give a Leviathan another Leviathan's powers on top of their own.
Oh, good. Gosh.
So it's like an extreme difficulty mode, and the game is not easy anyway. I don't know who needs a mutation pack. Our topic of the week this week is games that did not meet our expectations. Now, this could be positive, that we either came in with low or no expectations and they were exceeded, or it could be, hey, I had some level of hype for it, I researched it, I liked it, etc., and then I played it. There are certainly those games that you read the rules and you're like, oh, this is going to be great, and then you play it and you're like, oh, that's a bummer.
But the one that I'm going to bring up, I like it. I think it needed to bake more.
I know what you're talking about.
It seems like some of the mistakes that was made on an earlier game, they accidentally did it again. Unfortunately, it's Darrington Press's Queen by Midnight. Love the game. Like, the game is gorgeous. The mechanics are phenomenal. There's no player aids, which I know drive you crazy.
Absolutely drives me up a wall.
It wasn't a cheap buy, and I bought it at Gen Con. The theming is that the queen of the land has passed on. She has called for the princesses of the area to come in to fight to the death, or at least fight to having high favor to take the crown. Each of these queens is based on fairy tales. So you have one that's very much Elsa/Cinderella. You have a Snow White. You have Sleeping Beauty. I could continue. Each one of them is asymmetrical. There is 3 powers that they pull from, you use for your stats. Love it. It's gorgeous.
It has that twisted fairy tale theme of you can make a pretty direct connection between whoever the one character is when you look past. It's like, oh, they're Ursula, or oh, they are
it's
Rapunzel.
Snow White was the one that I love the most, which is Madame No, with her mirrors, and she calls on her dwarves. She's a mafia boss, basically. I was like, oh, this is so cool. The problems that I have are that misprints in the rule book. Clarification on some of the cards is rough. They did Ukatoa, and I enjoyed Ukatoa. They have done a couple other smaller games I actually really enjoy. They did much better with. I was expecting a little more.
I went into the game with very weird expectations. I learned about the game because of BGG's Gen Con preview. I make sure that my dollars at Gen Con are very well planned. And I saw that. I saw it thematically. I'm like, this looks really cool. I have no idea what it's about. Didn't get a real good flavor from the BGG page. And I reached out to you. I'm like, hey, I think I might look at this game. You're like, don't worry about it. I'm picking it up. Cool. You spoke really highly about it. And the production on the whole is nice. Like that big clock tower.
Oh, the clock tower that turns and has working mechanisms.
Clock tower is a dice tower. I really like fairy tale themes. I really like twisted fairy tale themes. And I came out of that game strongly disliking it. In the interim time since we played it, my opinion of it has only soured. Because amongst everything else we talked about, to me, it commits the biggest sin in board gaming, and that I am bored on my turns. I have no reason to pay attention to my opponents. And turns can be a really long time. And it's one thing if you're taking a long term, like, okay, so what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Okay, this is what he's trying to do. Okay. That type of turn I'm fine with. But anytime it's like, take your turn, I don't care, get back to me later. And that game did that every single turn. After we talked about it, you were much stronger about this opinion than you were on Skyrise, where it needs a second edition.
Yeah.
I would happily try a second edition of the game.
Yeah, it needs a revised. It needs something.
If you told me, hey, I want to put Queen by Midnight on the table, I would ask you why. Because it's like, oh, I've got 3 other people, we're going to play a 5-player. Fine, I'll be your 5th. That's the way I feel about it.
Can I do my taxes while I'm doing it?
Basically. And it's a real shame when those expectations aren't met. And part of it is certainly a cost thing. But for me, my big issue comes down to I have taken my time, and more importantly, I've taken my friends' time. And I have sat there and I have tried to teach them. I've tried to get them excited about this. And now I'm disappointed. There was one not that long ago, actually I picked up at Gen Con as well, called Seas of Strife. Okay. And I believe you were part of the play we had on it. It's a trick-taking game. It's an old game, originally came out as Strife. And it's a trick taker where there is a scaling amount of suits. Each suit has a few numbers in it, but every number is only there once. So the entire deck is like 1 to 90. Each suit has roughly 8 to 10 cards in it because not every number is in the deck. Where it's really interesting is, as I'm reading the rules, I'm like, I think this is going to be one of my favorite games of all time. When you lead the trick, the other people have to follow that suit.
Right.
But if you don't follow it, then you get to lead a second suit. And so now it becomes, okay, I have to follow either one. And now the winning suit is whichever one has the most representation. But the problem we ended up running into is it didn't matter. If you just were out, you were just out of the trick. You could very easily just bypass it. And it was one that, like I said, on paper should have been so much more. And it just didn't trigger.
Right.
And thankfully that was, $20, something inexpensive, but we had 5 people at that table, took the time to learn it, research, do all the stuff. And I think that's my biggest thing with having an expectation missed. I don't want to waste other people's time.
Yeah. And I think when going back to Queen by Midnight, I think we sit there and talk about the gameplay, the fact that I could do something to just you and completely ignore the rest of the players. That's a problem. There should have been more things that affected everybody.
Now, on the opposite end, It is wonderful when your expectations are vastly defied.
Yeah, I don't have one of those.
I actually have a surprisingly long list that I could have picked. I'm not sure if you've played either of these yet.
I have not.
The first one, I don't like Uwe Rosenberg that much. As a person, I'm sure he's fine. Whatever. Most of the time I played his games, I don't particularly like him.
Yeah.
Bonanza's fine. I never want to play Agricola again in my life. Caverna is a better Agricola that I don't want to play again. Ray Colt was boring after the half of a play. I just have never really been a big fan.
Yeah.
But you hear about A Feast for Odin. And Feast is, on its face, it's huge. Sprawling, and there's 64 action spaces, and there's all the stuff going on. And it's feed your people. All the hallmarks.
All things.
But it synthesizes into such an interesting package, especially because even though there's 64 actions, there's really only 20. They're all just kind of gradients on each other. And where I am just head over heels for the game, I played it 3 or 4 times and did pretty badly. But I eventually was scoring positive because you start the game at -88.
Oh.
And then the goal literally for your first couple games should just be get to 0.
Okay.
And so once you do that, you realize, oh, here's where my inefficiencies were. I'm going to try this. Oh, I'm going to try this. I have played this game 40, 50 times now. There is still things I'm learning in this game. And it's all from one that I was gifted it, so I didn't have to pay the exorbitant price tag on it.
Nice.
Because somebody gave it to me okay, let's try it out. Let's see what's there. I expected I'm going to play this once and I'm going to get rid of it. This game is in my permanent collection.
Oh,
it is routinely in my top 100. In fact, it's routinely in my top 25. Okay. It's really, really good.
Since I was listening to you, I was sitting there thinking about things that have surprised me. Sushi Go and Sushi Go Party. Super simple games. I love Sushi Go when I got to play Sushi Go Party. Such a simple, expansive buildup on such a good party game.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay, what are they going to add to this to make it interesting? And then they did. You have a menu, and you build the menu, and I just wasn't expecting that. That's a quick take, but
for
you
sure.
know.
Well,
but,
you made me
God.
think of another positive in the category, another Game Right game, which was Abandon All Artichokes.
Oh, yeah!
Talk about a game that should be terrible.
Oh my gosh.
Literally, the game was designed from the name down. But as a quick, fun deck destruction game, which I think teaches deck building almost better than any other game out there.
Oh, yeah, because you're actively trying to figure out what do I grab to then mess up my deck.
Yeah. And it takes 10 minutes, and then you shuffle up. It's great.
Yeah.
That was another one. It's Game Right. It's cute art.
Oh, yeah.
It's in a tin. I don't like tins. Fine, whatever. And then you play all right, we're going to do this again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, didn't you give me a copy and then I end up buying a copy or I want a copy?
No, you played my copy, and then you went out and bought another one, and then you took that to Fort Wayne.
Yes, that's right.
You've done that with a few games, including Q-Birds.
Yes. Q-Birds is actually currently in my car.
It is never far away from a game night for me.
Well, and in all honesty, that is another game of I didn't know what to expect, and oh my God, that's a great game.
The other one that I want to talk about as far as exceeding expectations is one that most people probably could be mad at me for even having low expectations for. Shem Phillips is a strong designer. Raiders of the North Sea is one of my favorite games. Shipwrights of the North Sea is a game that I have played. I never played Explorers. And then they got into the West Kingdom trilogy. And Architects is very good. But I ended up passing my copy out because I would just play Raiders every time. I like Raiders better. Then I played Paladins. And Paladins is big, it's heavy. It's interesting on its face, but it is deeply multiplayer solitaire. I don't care what you're doing. There's a little bit of interaction on the center board, but it is strongly multiplayer solitaire.
Yeah.
And so I went into it where I got rid of Paladins because I had backed it. Mm-hmm. I got rid of Architects. I got rid of Shipwrights. I got rid of Explorers. I literally was down to just Raiders, and Raiders is still in my top 10 games. But I was I need to try Viscounts. And Viscounts is stunning. It is the game that cemented to me that I actually do love rondel games. It's not a light game by any means. It's on that mid-heavy Euro. Everything else that's going on. And in fact, before I played Viscounts, I had a copy of Wayfarers of South Tigris, and I got rid of that because I set it up to play it 3 different times, and I put it back in the box every time. I just don't want to deal with this. There's too much going on in that game. So I really went in expectation on the floor. Got it as a gift, and absolutely love it. Easily one of the best surprises I've had. I played it for the first time here in 2024. One of the best games I played this year. And it's nice to be able to say that because too often it is your expectations are generally met. But this is a good reminder to me, and why I think we're having the conversation, is always be willing to experiment.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that I have been stoked for and missed, things that I don't care about that I've loved, things that certainly meet expectations. I mean, Apiary from last year, rue the friggin' roof. Love Apiary.
Oh, yeah.
But
Space bees.
It's such a nice reminder of just, you don't have to be locked into your same opinions. The hobby is broad enough that if you don't like Area Majority, you might still find an Area Majority game you like. It's the sound of one of our favorite segments that we haven't played games for in a while because we wore out on it.
We wore out on it real quick because we both went really hard on each other.
We did. And it's something that I'm excited to pick back up, but we need to... there's a reason this is not a recurring segment on a lot of shows. This is, of course, why did I play that?
Because you put it on the table and you made me.
As part of the conversation that we were just having, sometimes it is worth going after a game you wouldn't otherwise look at. And Iwari by Michael Schock, it's a remake of one of his older games called China, was that game for me. I first played it on Board Game Arena. I was like, it's an abstract game. I don't like abstract games, but whatever, I'll try it out. I got an invite into the game, and I did absolutely terribly. Like, got hammered because I didn't understand everything that's going on in that first game. Played it a second time, absolutely got hammered. It took like 4 or 5 plays because this is one of those ones that as I played more, I'm like, there's something here that I am missing, that it's not missing from the game, like I am just missing it. And then once it all clicked, it became an obsession of mine for a while.
Let me tell you what I'm not missing. That game. Not at all.
To give you the quick rundown on it, so that way Scott can then hammer in. There is a very pasted on theme. It's a very pretty theme of giant deities sculpting the land in your I don't know. It's not there. It's like, very pretty.
Like, it's very pretty. Like, you can't... No, I'll wait.
On your turn, you can play up to 3 cards to place up to 2 of your player pieces into one region. And there is this really fascinating area majority thing going on because there's actually 2 area majorities happening at the same time in each region of whoever has the most pieces scores for every piece in that region as far as tents go. So if I have 6, I'm to score 6 points. If there are 7 pieces in there and 6 of them are mine, I'm going to score 7 points. The problem is whoever comes in second scores whatever the person ahead of them got. So I would score 7 and Scott would score 6. So there's some really interesting timing games going on of, can I sneak in there versus... okay, maybe it's just not worth me trying for it because I'm only going to get 2 points, that type of stuff. And then there's the secondary set collection, or rather area majority, which is the towers, that you only score the towers if you control 2 adjacent towers. So each one's going to score multiple times, but it is very possible that nobody will ever score them if the majorities just don't line out right. It's really interesting card play. It has those couple of area majority systems. It is a quick teach. It is a quick play. Even with 5 players, it's maybe 45 minutes. I love it at every player count. And Scott, go ahead and tear into it.
Okay. It is very pretty. The pieces that are inside of it are very, very nice. This is not any secret. I do not like area majority games. We play 3 cards to do 2 pieces in one zone, and I'm just like, oh dear God, no. What I can say, those of you that do enjoy area majority, it is a very different style of area majority. I think people will enjoy that style. You're trying to build up your totems. You're trying to make sure that you are on the top of the totem so that you are in control.
You came away from this more positive than I expected you to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't want to set it on fire, because the whole thing is like...
No, that was Endless Winter.
That was Endless Winter. Oh, my God, that game. God, we already talked about that game.
You're still mad at me for that one.
You know what? You're lucky we're speaking. You're lucky we have an episode 3 after playing that one. It didn't hit. It didn't have any sweet spots that made me sit there. It's like, the fact that I don't like area majority, there wasn't enough to sit there and make me want to sit back and continue to try. Area majority is my hardest one, but it is one that I will always sit here and go back to trying. There's just not enough here for me to do it. Artwork's gorgeous. Like, I love the abstract art. Are these actual physical manifestations of deities? I don't know. Or is it just an overarching aspect of a deity? I don't know.
The last defense I'll give for it, and then I have a fairly big criticism. The player count, I think this scales incredibly well because the solo mode is very interesting. It plays under its own set of rules using those concepts we've already discussed, but it's very difficult. And so if I want a really tough solo experience, this is one that does that well for me. I like it best at 2 because it has that 2-player 5 tribes feel of, I'm going to do this and I'm going to set myself up for my next action that playing in the 3, 4, 5 range doesn't have, but I love the way it functions.
I think the other issue that I had with this game is the fact that, like other area majority games that you and I have played, because you know the game a little bit better, it's easier for you to figure out the strategy. And this game does not allow people that do not have that mindset to be able to figure it out faster.
There are certainly ways you could luck into it, but yeah, this is
You have to luck into it. That's not cool.
This is a game where the player with a broader knowledge of it will do better if you've only played a few times. Once both people have played maybe half dozen times, which is a big ask, admittedly, there's a lot that's happening here that creates a really interesting dynamic of, I understand how these systems work. I like how each of the different maps does something different and forces you into it different ways. There's really interesting gameplay there. But yeah, that's one that, especially if only one person has played it a lot, yeah, those first couple games for second person or third or whatever, they're not going to go super well.
That lies the problem, is the fact that there wasn't enough there to sit there and be like, okay, I'm willing to give this another shot to iron out where I know the kinks are me and figure out where I could find enjoyment with this game.
I do find it so interesting that we had such polar opposite reactions to it, because I love area majority. I hate abstract games. I'm very bad at them.
Love abstract games.
That we came away with this, especially because it's the abstract nature that made me look at it and go like, there's something here that I am missing that I want to learn more. It's the same thing I talked about with Feast for Odin, of the more I played it, the more I learned it, the more I realized, oh, here's the game. Here's where all the little intricacies are. And you didn't have that.
No, there wasn't enough to make me go, okay, I'm willing to try this again in 3 months.
Sure.
Or, when we're not playing at 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this game can go back to your shelf.
And there's going to be the last note that I want to make about it, and that is a fair criticism of it. It is really, really, really stinking hard to find. Thankfully, it is on Board Game Arena, because, you're not getting the fun tactile experience, because this is one of my favorite tactile games to play, but you can understand, you can learn the game, you can play it a lot. The actual physical game, I paid more than I should have for it, and then I paid even more to the publisher to get a hold of the extra bits and all the things. So this thing is fully customized, it is deluxe beyond deluxe, and for me, it is worth it. I also have a very hard time telling somebody, hey, go pay this much money, because it is very hard to find. You can get the regular edition. I'm speaking more of the deluxe edition, because the deluxe edition has the purple player pieces that is the faction for the solo mode.
AKA, it is Mark's color.
But I actually don't play purple in this.
That's true.
Because if I'm not playing orange because of BGA, then I will make bad assumptions on other players' stuff. That's a me thing. That's not a game thing. But the extra deluxe has metal coins, and it has all the extra maps. So there's 12 maps in here instead of 2. It's the superior version of the game, because if you like the game, you're going to want more out of it, and this gives you everything you want.
Then what I'm hearing is, if you didn't have the deluxe edition, this would rank a whole lot lower. If you only had those 2 base maps.
I think that's a fair statement, because I think it's the same thing of, well, maybe. Because there's one map in here I play majority of the time, because I just really like the way that map functions. So I don't know if that's really the case, because I have the extra content. I love using it, but I also don't think if it wasn't there, if I only had those 2 maps, the system is intricate enough and interesting enough. People have played chess on the same board since the 1800s, I think, is what the current variation is from. So I think there's something there, but I'm in the attic criticizing the foundations because I have the deluxe edition.
Right.
So, and BGA does have all the maps on there. So I learned it that way, even without all the other deluxe bits. I don't know. I would have to think about that.
Okay.
That means that next episode, it's my turn to get hit with something, and I am not gonna be positive.
Nope. It's time for Table, Shelf, and Trade.
Scott, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Yeah.
What's your first one?
My first one, flat out, just going to say it, Shelf. It's going to be Bargain Quest.
I still need to play this. It's been sitting in my basement for like 3 months.
Yeah. I love just the base game. I, of course, am the weirdo that has bought all the expansions. Bargain Quest appeared Gen Con a couple years ago, and I was like, this is fun, because you are a shopkeeper. You're not an adventurer, you're a shopkeeper, and you are putting things in the window to attract adventurers, and you want their money. And if they survive, great. If they don't, oh well, I still got their money. But the whole thing is there's only a limited number of adventurers that are going to come into town. And you have to be able to beat 3 monsters with that group of adventurers. So it's one of those, these group of people have to stick around for a little while.
Yeah.
Because if they die too fast, oh boy. And so there's 4 different classes. And so many of those go into the adventurer deck. And then they have a lot of mixed, where it's combinations of the 4 different types. And they all have different abilities. Some of them steal money. Some of them, like, you have to give them an item and they only are going to pay 1 gold for it, which... That's really bad, but then again, it's also like, great, here, you're going to take this piece of junk. It's out of my hand now. You also upgrade your shop. The monsters are a lot of fun because they're kooky. It's all very theme-centric. I was lucky enough to be able to get some of the promos, so I've got a couple of the promo shops.
Sure.
You fold out a nice little shop, and it's all fun and stylized. And
this is not co-op. Each shopkeep has 3 parties to go through.
Yeah, so what happens is that we are competing over the same group of adventurers. So we're going to have so many adventurers that are coming to town, and we're going to figure out what of our hand we're going to put in our shop window. I'm going to get a person, you're going to get a person. If your item is more attractive, they're going to go to your store.
Interesting, okay.
You get to choose who you're going to bring into your shop, but it's based on what's in your window. If you put a black magic robe, you're not going to get the cleric.
Yeah.
They're not going to look at your shop because you have something for a wizard. They're going to look for the person who has the cleric item. So maybe you just put a generic item out there that attracts everybody, so you're at least guaranteed someone's going to walk into your shop doors, but it means you're not going to get first pick.
Interesting.
And so then it's, okay, good, this person has 10 gold. I'm going to give them this, this, and this. Here's their stats. And then they go fight. If they win, they come back. If they don't defeat the monster deals them damage, but then they might have survived because there is life and shield.
Player count on this?
2 to 4.
Okay.
I actually think there might be a solo. Let me double check.
Sure.
Why don't you go ahead and start with your table shelf and trade while I get that info?
So I'm going to start with one that I started very, very high on. And at this point, I am just calling it a trade. I will still call this Tom Lehman's best game.
Okay.
It is Res Arcana.
Okay.
So Res Arcana is a engine building hand management game where your goal is to just get to 10 points, or I think 13 with the Pearl expansion. The game definitely is helped by its expansions. The first expansion, Luxe Tenebrae, you just shuffle in and you forget it even exists. It's one of those. It's a great expansion. But I played just the snot out of this game. I've played it physically. I played it digitally. It's one that, man, it is hard to have it last more than 20 minutes, and it feels like a full fat hour and a half experience in those 20 minutes.
Wow.
It's really great. Where my experience on it dropped so much is repeat plays, unlike something like Race for the Galaxy, staying with Tom Lehman, they don't give back as much.
Oh, okay.
To the point where it's actually what I was mentioning with Space Base earlier. You realize the strategy, and that's kind of it. The interesting part of the game, and you should just play with the draft. Doesn't matter if it's your first game, if it's whatever, you could just play with the draft. 8 cards. That's it. That's all you got. And that's what you have to play the entire game with. You will not draw any more cards. No more will be added. If you're playing a 2-player game, you're going to see 16 cards out of everything that you have. That's it. And so there's some really interesting game-to-game experience of, oh, I haven't seen these cards, versus, oh, I've never seen this card in this particular combination, which, again, leads to a lot of really great experience. But what I have found is when I play Res Arcana, if I am playing badly, I'm just playing to play with all my cards and see what happens, I have more fun. If I am playing competitively, then you're going to find this 2 to 3 card strategy. You realize very quickly that all of your cards being played, you will lose the game against somebody that is playing competitively against you. That's a bummer, because in as short of a game as it already is, finding that I want to be as streamlined as possible and use almost nothing of what is ultimately not a lot in the first place, it's a real shame. There's the one particular location card where basically if that's out, the goal of the game is get as many death resources and just get to 10 points as quickly as possible. If you are willing to play badly and just experiment and have fun, I will table it and I will enjoy that experience. But if you want to play competitively, it's not fun for me anymore because it's done and over.
Gotcha. Going back to my first game, Bargain Quest was actually done by Renegade Games, and that's actually a 2 to 6.
All right, cool.
So yeah, my next one from Keymaster Games, Caper Europe.
Another great production house.
Yeah.
Really good stuff.
Great production. Along the same lines how you feel about Res Arcana. Like, played it so many times, And I'm just kind of like, I'm kind of done with this. You are playing competing masterminds, trying to get items of certain renown into your hold. I know we've played it.
We did.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of done with it. Sitting there trying to think of games, I'm just like, I forgot I owned that game. And that's
To be
a problem.
fair, it's also sitting in that game bag over there.
Is it sitting in that game bag?
Yes, it is. Because I actually asked you to bring this over.
That's right, you did.
I did. Because the theme is so great. You're just art thieves across Europe. Really cool.
Yeah.
But I remember we finished that play, and I think I ended up winning, but I looked at him like, I feel like even though the location decks will change out, I've seen everything this game has to offer.
Yeah. It's because of those things that I'm just kind of like, okay, this can be traded. And I don't do that often. And
that said, I think for the right people, it's one of those front porch games where you just get a buddy and you sit and you've got a beer or your iced tea or whatever, and you're sitting there and you're playing a game mostly to pass the time.
Because you're having conversation.
Exactly. It's a game you can have that conversation through the course of the game. You're having a good time with the game.
Yes. But I can think of other games that I would rather sit and have that beer and the conversation with and play, because I'm going to have a better time with the game.
Sure.
And make the conversation and the time that I'm spending with my friend mean a whole lot more to me.
Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, which, hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Clearly, you are further into the hobby than the average person. What's cool about Caper Europe is you can find it at places like Target or Barnes & Noble.
Which
and
is great.
And it's inexpensive. It's like $30, $35. And if that's as far as you get in board gaming, you're going to have a really good time with it. For somebody like you and I, yeah, there are certain games that we've talked about that I'm like, I can't find an audience for this. I think there is a strong audience for Caper Europe.
Yeah.
It's just not us.
It's just not us.
We just play too much.
We play too much.
With that, I'm going to mention my last game for Table Shelf and Trade. I've been a little middling to negative on a lot of what I've talked about in the last few episodes. And so I just wanted to be flat out positive. And so I was looking at my shelves and I'm like, you know what? I don't get to talk about this game enough. It is probably the only production studio I would put directly under Roxley. I would put them at number 2, and it's Moonrakers by Ivy Games. Flat out, it's a shelf. It is a hard sci-fi deck building and negotiation game where there are contracts on the table. It is a race to 10 points, and you are able to literally negotiate over everything in the game. Who's going to roll the danger dice, the hazard dice? Who's going to get points? Who's going to get coins? Who's going to get cards? And it is a free-flowing, as long as you want to negotiate, you can negotiate. Know that you need to have that negotiation desire to play the game. But if you like those, there's so much here. The negative that people have, I think, fairly rightfully called out, it can have that Catan issue where somebody is at 8 points, I'm not going to work with you anymore. I have not seen that happen, because inevitably what happens is somebody gets to 8 points and then somebody makes this crazy end run to try to score 4 points in one go. And it either succeeds and everybody celebrates because I can't believe you just pulled that off, or it whiffs and it's like, you tried. Now I'm going to keep trying to win.
Yeah.
It is a game that has incredible expansions. The Overload expansion is just more stuff, but it's more variety of stuff. Nomad board adds kind of an exploration specialization board to play on. And then Binding Ties really emphasizes that negotiation aspect of, look, I know you don't want to work with me right now, but if you do, then you get a point with me on your faction tracker, and that's going to be worthwhile because now you get to cash it in for all kinds of stuff. It is a beautiful production. It's a wonderful theme. And if for some reason none of that sells you, we've talked about this, I think, I don't like apps in my games. Not out of any kind of like technology is ruining things, anything like that. The field I work in, I spend 8 to 10 hours a day on a computer screen. And so when I'm playing board games, I just want to play board games with people. The Luminor app turns the game completely cooperative. And so the negotiation, instead of it being over the cards, turns into, okay, what do you need out of the market right now to go take on this challenge? The fact that it's free, the fact that it is a completely different play experience, because that idea of, okay, I can play the 2 thrusters we need, but I don't have any reactors. How can we make this work? And then it turns into a long conversation where it's impossible to alpha game because there's just too many cards at play, but you have to really trust the people you're playing with to be able to pull through some of the challenges. Really phenomenal. Base game is expensive-ish. I want to say it's $60-$70. There's a lot in that box, and it's gorgeous.
Box, yeah.
And then, you can deluxify it as much as you want. Like I said, I wanted to gush over something, and that is one I'll gush over every day.
That's awesome. Love it. Alrighty, we're on that rotation, and the rotation today is games that are heating up and cooling down. We like to call it the HVAC. Mark, what's happening on your table? We got something heating up, or we have it cooling down?
I have both, actually.
I also have both.
Nice. And both games are ones that have had the benefit of initial plays with a lot of time in between subsequent plays, and then getting to play them a lot. So the first one, and I apologize if you hear extra noises, I have a sick 11-month-old, and so hopefully he's just going to keep sitting here eating puffs because got to take care of your kids.
Yep.
So the one that I started high, like gave it a 10 high.
Okay.
And now dropped it to about a 5.
Oh, wow.
Is Quantum. And Quantum was a Funforge release. I forget the designer's name off the top of my head. It is the only thing I've played from this designer. Doesn't necessarily mean that's his only thing, or the only one I've played of his. And it is a modular board where it is hard sci-fi again. There's technically a theme. There's not really a theme. Each of your ships is powered by what's called a quantum drive, where all of your ships are these awesome, big, chunky, probably the best D6s I've ever handled. Powdery, frosted, translucent thing, gorgeous dice. Where the ship gets stronger the lower the number. You need to perform a little bit of area control around a central planet, matching a number printed on a tile that will allow you to place one of your quantum cubes on the table. So it's this really interesting gambit of I need high numbers for control, but I need low numbers to win combat. It is just the first person to whatever X number is, first person to get out all those pieces, bang, done, they win, game's over. What I have found over time is in 2 players, one person gets ahead and they stay ahead. It's very hard to come back from being behind. In 3 or more players, because it plays up to 5, the issue becomes 2 people are going to be constantly in each other's faces. And maybe luck is really in one person's face, and so that second person is just losing. But the third person, who is smartly avoiding the combat, will just win. For as modular as the board can be, for as much as going on, like there's a promo tile called the Void, where literally you gain extra capacity in one track that it can't be involved in combat. And if you don't have all your ships involved in combat or control, it's a wasted turn. It's one that started very high. It stuck around for production. Like I said, those dice are amazing. And then it just, over repeated play, it really fell apart.
Mine, it's cooled down for me because it's really hard for games like that are co-op that I end up sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm good with this. I don't think I need any more. Spirit Island.
Really?
I just, like, the more I've played it, the more I'm just like, I don't get what's so great about it. I mean, I get its premise. I mean, you're playing almost like a tower defense game in a way. You're setting zones up to make sure you can take on the humans that are trying to invade your island. It's a campaign, it's battle cards, it's things that I should like because it is the style that I enjoy. Doesn't really do anything for me.
I have an enormous amount of content for this game. Pretty much everything except the most recent expansion, Nature Incarnate, I think. What I have found is, for the people that really like the game, extra content is variety. It's more to learn. It's stuff to dig into.
Yeah.
What I have generally found to be the case, though, for my experience with it, the rules overhead is very high.
Yeah.
And it's very long. And it is really hard to teach somebody. And so I don't want to go back to it.
Yeah.
I feel almost obligated to it, that I want to try more. I like what's there, but I understand how you could cool on this.
Yeah. It's too complicated for what should be a simple game, especially when you're dealing with cooperative. You don't want a cooperative game to be complex. You want it to have meat, but you don't want it to be...
You don't want the rules to get in the way of the experience.
Yes.
And the rules get in the way.
And the rules get in the way. Very much so.
I totally understand why it is a very popular game for the solo guild.
Oh, yeah.
But I have so many solo experiences. This is one that, because of its complexity, I've not gone back to.
Yeah. That's why Spirit Island goes to a much cooler space with me.
Very fair.
Yeah. So obviously we both done the cool side. So obviously what's warming up?
I generally do not like the X and Y genre. Roll and write, flip and draw,
Yep.
whatever. And one of the first games I played in the flip and write genre was Welcome To.
Oh, Oh, yeah.
Because it was one of the first real games in that, like, hey, check this new genre out, even though it's been around since Yahtzee. I missed it. Like, I played them like, okay, I've got some numbers going, and I have a couple of things going here. I don't get it. I've returned to stuff like, that's so clever, don't get the love for it. I weirdly ended up in Foster the Meeple's BGA tournament for Welcome To. I'm like, I don't know why I joined it. I'm like, whatever. And the game clicked. I don't know. I have now been playing an enormous amount of it because it is so simple. And in the genre that it stands in, there is a lot going on with very little. Has a very low setup overhead, but it feels like a different challenge every time. I know roughly one of my rows is going to be low numbers. One of my rows I'm going to try to be high numbers. And I'm going to try to mix that third row. But sometimes the cards just don't work that way, especially when you're able to shuffle the deck again. So it is one that I have found a surprising amount of depth out of a very little deck of cards. I've not gotten to try anything but the base map. I want to try some of the other stuff. But yeah, huge turnaround. Went from like a 4 all the way up to probably an 8 right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
My heating up game, for me, because I love its predecessors, the fact that the 4th game of its iteration is like a welcome back to the wholesomeness of the games that I love. It's Game Rate's Forbidden Jungle. It was Forbidden Island.
Also in that game bag.
Yep. But the whole thing is, I said, there's like, oh yeah, there's a reason why I got it. It started with Forbidden Island. I played Forbidden Island. I was like, okay, I totally get this whole thing. And then it was Forbidden Desert, which actually ends up being a Mensa Award winner of a game. Love that one. And then Forbidden Sky came out. And Forbidden Sky is a huge game. It was
neat production gimmick.
Neat production game. It looks really pretty on the table. And that's about it.
That's probably the plainest review I've ever heard of that game.
Yeah.
People do not like Forbidden Skies.
No. Honestly, it's probably one of the worst games I've ever played. So then when Forbidden Jungle came out and I noticed it was another small tin, they went back to basics and they did it well. And it even has arachnid-like aliens warning. All about it. Absolutely love it. It's that good of a game. They sat there and they listened to their fans saying, Sky was a miss. Please fix. And they continued the storyline.
And it's like...
And fixed it.
5 years since Forbidden Skies. Like, it was a good jump of time.
All of a sudden, it just showed up. I went, wait a second. Forbidden Jungle, what? Had no clue it was coming. It was one of the first games I grabbed when it came out.
So I've only played Island. I played Island, for the first time just a couple years ago, actually. And I remember sitting there playing like, okay, this is Pandemic simplified. I totally get why people like this. It's fun. It's fine. And I've never had the opportunity for Desert. By the time Jungle came out, I had nothing on it because I just didn't have the attached to the series.
Yeah, so if you've played Forbidden Desert, if you've Forbidden Island, it's still very much that. There is a mechanism you're trying to work with your team to achieve. Island is trying to keep yourself afloat while you search for idols. Forbidden Desert, you're trying to get parts to your airship. Forbidden Sky, I honestly don't remember.
You're on a sky platform. Illusion of Gaia style, and you're building a rocket ship to be able to leave. Yeah. And I believe then the rocket ship crashes.
Yeah, and the rocket ship crashes in the jungle, and the jungle is built on a platform on a planet type thing, and it starts to fall apart. But there is a whole shifting mechanic that you're trying to do, and I love it.
Scott, fun discussion tonight. I actually really enjoyed this particular episode. At this point, I think it's time to wrap it up. Why don't you hit us with our standard legalese, and we'll move on from there.
Theater Geeks Entertainment LLC is locally owned and operated, and we would like to take the time right now to thank our sponsors. Robin's Nerd Supplies is your supplier for all of your dice and other gaming accessories. Founded in 2018, go to robinsnerdsupplies.com, enter Theater Geeks, that's TheaterGeeks, and receive 10% off your order. And we also would like to thank Eco Owl Press. They are a local union member printing company that is celebrating 10 years in the business. Their aim is to fulfill your printing needs while keeping green. So check them out at ecoowlpress.com.
Scott, at this point, I'm bored of you.
The feeling is mutual.
Let's go play some games.
Sounds good.